I just realized we weren't recording and we're saying some juicy stuff about real estate. Okay, we got 2 minutes left. So what industry is in New Ulm though? Is it?
Yeah, we've got some great industry in New Ulm. We've got a craft. We've got a 3M there. We've got a company called named Windings, which is they do small motors. They've got the hospital, which it's one of the, I think a couple years ago it won top 25 small town hospitals in the country. So they got a helicopter pad. I mean, it's a very robust hospital.
During COVID, I drive to small towns and I cruise through New Ulm. My grandmother lived in New Ulm on the main Broadway, I think it is. And I was, it's been 15 years. I tried to find her house. I think I spotted it, but they have a Hy-Vee.
Yeah, they've got a Hy-Vee. They've got Cashwise. I mean, they've got, New Ulm, is definitely a growing. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because they're building a lot of new homes there. Home values are going up quite a bit. There's some local investors that are doing some really cool stuff, turning, like this one guy turned this old, I think it was an old Ace Hardware into a speakeasy. So I think, I don't know. I mean, if you look at, I like to focus on macro trends when it comes to real estate. Population is growing. Materials are going to become, I don't see them becoming cheaper really anytime soon. I mean, obviously lumber came down now a little bit, but I think we still have a massive labor shortage. We probably will for a long time. So pre-existing structures are going to, I think, beat out a lot of other cities in terms of growth. Because it's crazy, right? Values keep going up.
Isn't is it the Shell? There's a brewery there too.
There's Shell's Brewery. Yeah, I think it's the second largest brewery in
and
Minnesota. I think Summit beat out what?
Summit beats Shells.
I think so. Yeah, I think they are. But I think it's the second. It's the second largest family-owned brewery in the country.
Wow.
But they do premium. I mean, they're a great, they're an amazing business. They're a union brewery, which is really cool. They're so popular around all these small towns, Cortland, Sleepy Eye, Hanska. But a lot of investors that I talk with are looking to buy apartment buildings in some of these smaller towns. I mean, I'm looking at these small towns. I think they're going to be amazing places for growth. I think we did see smaller towns struggle as there was an emergence of the city life as people started moving back to the cities. And I think technology, globalization spurred that on. But I think for those same reasons, globalization, technology, small towns are going to start to thrive. I think you're right. Obviously, but I don't know. You mentioned dying small towns. I don't know of many.
Well, there's some who, like my town I grew up in, Olivia, Minnesota, and the whole downtown is dead. The buildings have no stores anymore. There's they're empty buildings. Now it may come back, but that town right now isn't coming back like New Ulm. Mm-hmm. Now I see it's past the time, so I'm going to start. So welcome everybody to LeAnn Riley's Real Estate Investing Made Simple Club, where today we're going to learn about BRRRR investing. And then no, that doesn't mean we're cold, okay? Although it is winter in Minnesota sometimes, and that is what we talk about is BRRRR. So I do live interviews with experts and leaders in real estate investing nationally. And I'm LeAnn Riley. I'm a broker and a real estate coach, and I lead the Encore investment team of realtors in the Twin Cities and surrounding areas. And I built a multi-million-dollar portfolio in residential, multifamily, condo development, commercial, and vacation properties. And today it's kind of exciting because we're going to talk with someone who has built a portfolio with Burr. And I really started with the same method. So it's kind of fun for me to recollect what that was like starting in the 1980s. I'm also a national coach and a trainer, and I help ambitious people build wealth as real estate investors with my proven profit formula coaching program. And I provide education like what we're doing here today. It's free with the club, and be sure and check out my YouTube channel. It's just called LeAnn Riley Real Estate, and subscribe, because on there you'll find these interviews and you can learn. So today we want to welcome Gabriel Rysdahl, who's here to talk about the BRRRR strategy. And I just want to quickly tell you, BRRRR means buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So let me introduce Gabriel Rysdahl, and he built a portfolio of multifamily properties in St. Paul, Minnesota. And he started with just a single family house. And in just 8 years now, he has 40 units. So we're going to figure out, how did he do it? And you know what? You can do it too. And even more impressive is he set this up now as a part-time venture. And he's also an actor who lives in New York City. So he lives between the two towns and runs this portfolio. I bet some of you are thinking, I want to do it too. So hi, Gabriel. So glad you could join us today. And one other thing, first, I always share, how do I know these speakers? So I want to see if you remember that, you know, real estate investing is about networking. And that's really how I know these different people. And I first met Gabriel, it was several years ago, when I had a listing for a fourplex in the Payne-Phelan neighborhood of East St. Paul. And I did an open house, and Gabriel is a realtor, and he came to see the property. And he owned some other multifamily right in that same neighborhood. So somehow maybe he saw the sign, I don't know. But we had a great chat on the porch, and we stayed connected from that day. Do you remember that day on the porch?
I should have bought that property.
I know it. That was a darn good fourplex.
I know, yeah, it's great. It's got a pitched roof. It's buttoned up. It's a great property. I drive by it all the time.
Remember, it had a vacant lot next door that came with it. Remember that?
I do. Yeah.
There was a huge value add component.
Yeah. I think you're right. I'm always, vacant lots are always interesting to me. Sometimes the people, sometimes they'll sell them as certain things, but new construction is a different thing than what a lot of investors do, which, it's great. You can totally do it. So I agree with you. They do add value. And I think they were going for around like $10,000 a lot, which is one of the cheapest areas, I think, in the Twin Cities at that point. I think they're up to probably 20. So you're right. Just to hold lots is probably a smart thing.
Even if you just used it for parking, it had value.
Mm-hmm.
So give us a little bit of background about what led you to the BRRRR strategy in the first place.
Totally. Well, so I started, first of all, entrepreneurship. I love entrepreneurship. I don't like working for other people. I think a lot of investors that are probably on this call right now and people that get into real estate share that sentiment. I started a small business in college. Me and some partners sold it for a small amount of money about a year out of college. And I was wanting to stay in entrepreneurship. I was, working for a corporate job at the time, and I was like, I got to get out of this. I got to set my plan up to get out of this. And one thing that really attracted me to real estate was the different levels of cash flow, right? You've got in one sense, well, your product that you're selling is a very, I think of it as a malleable product, in that, let's say you own a restaurant, you have all your food on the shelves, you gotta move that product pretty quickly, or it's gonna go bad or it's gonna spoil. There's a lot of other, types of things as well. Like, if you own a store, you got to move product. It might, it might be seasonal. You might have seasonal products in that you got to move before the season changes. You might be paying other people for that product that you're selling now, and you have to pay them back or whatever. With real estate, your product, as in rentals, it's there. If a tenant calls you and says, "Hey, I got a little bit of an issue," you don't have to get to it. You don't have to get to it immediately. Whereas if you're in a restaurant, you got an issue, you got to be able to be there and fix it immediately. I contact my tenants and say, at this point, they submit their stuff via, the software that we have established, but we can get to them in a week, 2 weeks, oftentimes. Obviously, if it's an emergency, and ironically, people are always talking about the emergencies, like what happens if like the pipes burst, but in reality, that is such a small percentage of the total issues you face as a landlord. Most of them are pretty flexible, that you're able to handle it in a week, 2 week, or even a seasonal time frame. So I really like that aspect of real estate. The wealth growth with real estate is very attractive. One, the 1031 exchange pretty much allows you to capitalize on your gains if you sell a property and pay zero taxes. With depreciation, you're able to, it's a great, in terms of taxes, like I always say, W-2 income is the worst type of income. Real estate income is amazing. So in that sense, it's wonderful. And then you have the appreciation on the asset. If you look at, people always say, well, what about 2008 when the values dropped? Well, yeah, we've already surpassed a lot of those values. You're going to have dips and valleys in value, but real estate is one thing that's not really going to become obsolete. Land's not going to become obsolete. So those are the reasons that really got me into real estate. And
but did you know or hear of BRRRR strategy, or you just like started doing it and then figured out, oh, they're calling it BRRRR now?
So I got into real estate. I was a math major in college. I did some work with tracking the housing market in some math classes. And so I got into real estate because at the time I started to buy, the values were really good. A lot of people, I'm sure, talk about the 1% rule, different rate, the rent, gross rent multipliers and all that. So it was a really good time to buy when I started to get into it. Interest rates were really low. But then once I got into it, obviously the biggest issue that a lot of people face is capital. Most people can look at a property and say, wow, I found one that actually cash flows pretty well. I know what I want to do to the property. But it's $1 million building, or it's a $200,000 building. And you're that downstroke, as we call it, to put the capital in is 20%. If you're not going to live in it, even if you're house hacking and you're moving into it, putting an FHA loan down 3.5% or even 5% for a conventional loan on a single family, you come in, that strategy is only going to work for so long. So the BRRRR strategy is really the answer to your capital, the issues of capital. And what's so amazing about also the idea of, I was looking for a way to, how do you scale the business? I was being successful in the buildings that I was buying. There were duplexes, single family homes, fourplexes, and I was, cash flowing them. I knew what to do to the properties. I wasn't over renovating them. I wasn't, I was renovating them in a good way. I was buying in areas that were effective and successful. But I was like, man, what is my cap? The big barrier for me to really scale and grow was my capital. And the BRRRR strategy, that is the answer to your capital woes. And that's why and it took me a couple of years to really figure that out. I had no mentors. My personalities, I will get into it. I'll teach myself. I probably should have sought out more mentors early on, but I didn't. My family's not in real estate. Nobody I know is in real estate. So I really taught myself, to be honest, if I had a mentor, I probably would have grown even faster than I did. But the BRRRR strategy is what I've come up on as that's the answer to your capital issues. And it really allows you to create a scalable real estate business.
Right. And why you say that is basically you buy something that you can add value to. Okay. So you fix it up, adding that value, you rent it out at a higher rate. Therefore, the cash flow looks good. Then you go to the bank and you refinance, make money, for sure, get everything out you put in, but hopefully get extra. And then you use that to do it again. That's the repeat part of it. So before we keep going, I want to do a really quick poll. And what that is I'm going to throw up this poll here. I just want to see who is here. So all you have to do is answer this quick question. Are you trying to get started, fix and flipping, buy and hold? There's somebody, you just quick answer this. I'll leave it up for about, 30 seconds. Got a lot of people trying to get started. It's kind of cool to see this. This shows us who we're talking to. We got a lot of people getting started that are interested in the BRRRR strategy, which is a great way to start, especially when you don't know how. You need help. I love what you said about the mentor part. You're right. You can go faster and hopefully avoid some mistakes. And that's why I'm going to ask you about your mistakes. Okay, so it looks like here, I'm going to end the poll and then we're going to see who we all have. So here's the results. The biggest category is how to get started. And then the buy and holders. And we got some BRRRR folks, fix and flip, wholesale and syndication. So do you see, like, I don't even list them all here, folks, but I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 strategies. And there's a lot more in investing in real estate. So there you go. I just wanted to have, now we know we got a variety of people wondering about this BRRRR strategy, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start some of my questions. So, why do you think, Gabriel, that BRRRR works so well? What's like the number one reason? Okay,
so I've got a 10-unit building, right? And I've got on this building, it's there's 5 2-stall garages, which is 10 stalls. Just recently, when I bought it, we've raised the rent per stall to $50 a stall. Now, if one person wants both of those stalls, they actually pay a premium because they get the entire garage. So they pay $150.
Oh, even more.
Yeah. So in essence, let's say that's a $50 increase just on this one stall, right? And the way the math works is you have certain fixed expenses, your insurance, your property taxes, your water that you're paying, your gas and electric, depending on what you're paying for that. A lot of these are another cool thing about real estate is a lot of your expenses are fixed, right? You got maintenance, but whatever, but you have a lot of your fixed expenses. If you are able to raise value or raise your net operating income, right? And I would have people write this down because this is like the goal, like this is what you need to be a real estate investor to understand some of these equations. Capitalization rate or a cap rate equals your net operating income divided by your purchase price. I would write that down. People write that down. So, and I'm saying this because it's going to help me with my explanation about why the BRRRR strategy is so effective. A cap rate, you can Google what's the cap rate of East St. Paul, right? I'll tell you right now, it's about 6 to 6.5%. East Village, New York is like 2%, right? You can actually figure out, they change over time, but it's a slow change. So you can kind of figure out what the cap rate of a neighborhood is. Well, the way the equation works, right? Cap rate equals NOI divided by acquisition price. If you take over the acquisition price, right? Do a little simple math over to the left side of the equation. And then you divide the cap rate, right? Bring the cap rate to the right side, you get acquisition price equals net operating income divided by cap rate. Therefore, if you raise your value on that building, and let's say, so what I did with $50 a garage stall a month, that's $50 a month. You multiply that by 12. That gives you a net operating income increase of $600 a year on that building. Well, how much value did you just add to that building? You figure that out by dividing 600 by 6%, divided by 0.06. That gives you a value increase of $10,000 on that building. Knowing your cap rate, you can say, I just raised my net operating income by $50 a month. That just raised the value by $10,000. So let's say you look at it now $50, how long would it have taken me to pocket to get $10,000? Well, was it 10,000 divided by 50? That would give me, 200 months, right? Divided by 12. That would have taken me 16 years to recoup, to get that value of $10,000. That's a long time. However, I can now go to the bank immediately after raising the value and say, listen, I raised the value on this property by $600 a year. I want to get that $10,000 out. Refinance that with me so I can get my cash out. Obviously, you're not going to refinance for $50, but now on this building that I purchased, I can raise rents. I've raised rents over $1,000 basically in 8 months, which I'm not gouging anybody. I renovate the building. I make it a lot more, a lot nicer. You do effective, smart renovations. But I've raised now the rents by about $1,000. On the garage space, I've raised it about $300-400. So, and I acquired the property in February. So basically, let's say I'm raising value by $2,000 a month in my net operating income, and that's directly in my pocket, more or less, because all my expenses are fixed, right? It's not like I'm having to spend a lot more money aside from the renovation costs, but that's also adding value to the property. So $2,000 a month increase times 12, right? That's $24,000. Divide that by 0.06. That gives us a $400,000 increase of value on that property. $400,000. Now let's say the cap. So it's a lot of money. So what you're doing is you're injecting value over a short time frame. You're spending 6 months, a year and a half. And when you buy a building, you need to know, all right, this is when I buy a building, you have to come to the table with $200,000-300,000 down, right? Cash. If you're buying at $100,000 a door, 10 units, it's $1 million. All right, that's $200,000 of a down payment, 20%. Now, a lot of people are like, well, I thought my bank is going to require 25% down. If you establish a relationship with the bank, they'll let you put 20% down. That's what I put down. I only put 20% down, right? So then you can go back to the bank and say, listen, I just raised value. I renovated a lot of these units. I'm using subway tile. And now this is a whole nother question. Well, how do you renovate in an effective, smart way? Hell, I've walked into buildings and the guy's like, yeah, I just renovated. I changed all the carpet. That's the first thing I did. Well, that's stupid, right? That's the last thing you should do in a renovation, right? You should also be buying in bulk. You should be buying your tile in bulk. You should do the same tile in every single unit. You should do the same X, Y, and Z in every single unit. You should have the same paint in every single unit. And you should buy these products in bulk to get good unit prices on them. Anyway, that is why the Burr strategy is so effective. You get some of these projects going, you're renovating these units. You're now able to, I'm going to go back to the bank and say, let me refinance out of this position. I can get a whole bunch of my cash out. I can go buy the next building.
Yes. And the cash multiplies. And you know what? I built our portfolio on an original $40,000 home equity loan for a screen porch and a deck, and built that into the 14 million using this same thing. We bought condemned buildings, fixed them all up, rented them all out, and then cash out refied and did it again. Same theory. It's the value add. And we were down to the core of the condemned fourplex that we only had to pay $50,000 for. Granted, it's in the 90s, guys, but $50,000 for a condemned fourplex that you could all of a sudden make worth, 400 way back then for a measly 50,000. Not bad. So I love that explanation, Gabriel. And what kind of properties work best for this BRRRR? Is multifamily really the way to go, or can this work on the single family the same way?
So it can definitely work on the single family. I mean, I just flipped a single family. I would encourage, man, I can't tell you how long people are like, yeah, you should get into flipping. And I'm like, no, I'm not a flipper, right? And then a couple of years ago, I'm like, wait, I should just be flipping properties as well, right? Yeah, so don't be afraid to get into these other little businesses. Flipping a single family home. So in terms of price per unit, a one bedroom, or a single family home might go for what, 250, 300,000. I mean, it could go to, millions for a single family home, but Minneapolis, St. Paul areas, like, you can definitely renovate something, and refinance out or sell that or whatever. I would say the kind of renovations that I do, I'm always laser focused on maintenance costs and rent increases. So when you buy a building, I'm buying a 12-unit building right now. I'm under contract for one, and I'm having to renovate. I'm having to replace all the windows. It's going to be like 60 windows. That really doesn't do a lot for and I'm actually going to do a construction loan with the bank. And I'll throw out a Gateway Bank is my bank. I love Gateway Bank. They're amazing. Laura Mayer, I'm going to throw her out there. She's wonderful. But I'm going to do a construction loan to get all those windows done. That doesn't necessarily impact the value of rents necessarily. Right. But if there's enough meat on the bone to raise rents anywhere on the building, and again, we're not gouging anybody. We're taking a property that was maybe renting for $800 for a two bedroom. We're putting a $10,000 renovation into the unit, and then we're renting it for $1,200, right? And I've been so surprised. I mean, rents are going up, right?
Absolutely.
They were, I don't know. So anyway, you want to target properties. Well, one, you want to target properties where you're able to, first of all, add rent value. You're able to renovate them. And let's say you buy a property, a duplex, you buy it, it's renting for $1,400, both units. So it's $2,800, right? And you put 50 grand into it, and then you're able to raise rents maybe $50, or maybe you're actually already at market. Maybe you're already at market, $1,400 for a unit, right? That's a property where, you might buy it and put a brand new roof on it, brand new siding, but you want to be careful because tenants don't necessarily care about the roof. I mean, you might think they do, but they don't really care that much. This is the art of it, right? Because there are certain things you can do. It's all about adding value, and it depends on the class you're in. If you're at a 2-bedroom, if you're at a duplex, I found that a lot of my duplexes, what really attracts tenants is having really nice exterior things like lawns or grills or fire pits, right? Or flowers, right? So people might look at it, oh, I love the garden. I love the outside space, right? Whereas a 10-unit, you might actually put on a security system where people are able to track their packages. That's going to be really valuable. You might raise rents by $10, right? But again, $10 a unit or a person or whatever, multiplied by that's $10, that's $120 a year. You divide that by 0.06. That's a $2,000 value, right? So $10 a month increase just added $2,000 worth of value to your building. So, yeah, it's hard to know what you want to target, but I would say overall, maybe a rule of thumb is you want to target a building where you're able to add value, and that value directly correlates to your ability to raise rents or to raise the revenue on the building. Maybe might not be rents.
I agree with that. And the thing is, there's a lot of properties, especially right now with COVID, landlords who aren't experienced have not raised their rents. They think they can't, but just so you know, you can, even during COVID, on month-to-month leases, you can raise them. And people in my program all have. But what I'm trying to say is there's some landlords now who are like, oh, yikes, I got to get rid of the building, and they're under rented. So even without repairs, if you just get the rent to the market rate, it affects the value. That's what I love about your formula. Now add a few renovations to that also to, you know, and when you want to raise the rent the most is when you're switching tenants. You can do a $300 hike or something, you know, because you've done a little renovation and you're turning it at the same time. That works best. You know, it's hard to hit the guy who already lived there with $300 unless you can substantiate it, but usually they might move anyway. Sometimes you want them to move so you can get in and do I know one guy who adds dishwashers. He said dishwashers add up to a lot of money per month, a dishwasher. So
yep, I add dishwashers to all my units, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so see, you do need to know where to add the value, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist, does it?
No, and I would say that a lot of people if you look up like what is your ROI on a kitchen renovation for just a regular homeowner, almost if you just Google it, there are like national statistics. Almost all, I would say, actually have negative returns. So it might return 80% of your kitchen renovation for you living in it, right? So you have to combat that. You actually have to be like, for me, I tend to renovate at like 50 cents on the dollar. So for me, if I put $10,000 into something, I better be getting like $20,000 worth of value for that 10,000, right? That's what the numbers you want to, and it takes some time to get to that. I mean, it takes experience. It takes a team. You have to be able to give a lot of work to people. The more work you get, the cool thing about real estate too, is that it is such a snowball effect, man. I'm adding units so much faster now than I was 5 years ago. I mean, like it's like snowballing. Like I'm going to probably add another 20, 30 units next year. I mean, like it's just starting to, because you have all these systems and processes set up, which I know we want to talk about systems and processes. We do. That's so key to being able to scale and add value cheaply.
Even on the systems, Gabriel, I mean, considering you live in New York part-time, do you have a specific crew that you developed or a certain contractors you've used, or how do you handle that part?
Yep. So people are like, well, how do you do it from New York, right? Well, what do you need? If you really think about what you do as a landlord around your building, what do you do? All right, well, maybe you mow the lawn once a month, right? Okay, well, you can find someone to do that, and you can find someone to do that cheaper if you give them scale, right? Then you are doing it. And maybe not right away, but over time, right? People always like, well, people always like, well, how much do you value your time? Well, to be honest, I don't know. A lot of people's time is not actually that valuable. I mean, just by the numbers, right? Like a lot of people, it probably does make sense if they own one duplex to go and mow the lawn themselves. It probably makes sense for them to do that. Maybe they could find someone to do it for them. I mean, and then that would be more about cultivating a team, right? I'm all about getting someone to do something, even if it's going to take, if I have to pay them more than I could do it myself. One, you're establishing a base point. So I've got a guy that mows all my lawns. At one point, I was mowing all my property's lawns.
Yep.
Right? I found a price. Now I pay him this much money. now that gives me a base point. So now if I, you know, I was talking to some of my, I've got a guy that is a manager for me. We were very hands-on together, and I'm like, listen, like what we need to do is, let's in a year audit our lawn care service. So let's say, let's get 10 bids and see if we can find someone to do it cheaper if we want, right? But now we have a base point of knowing what we're paying our current guy. So we know that, oh, we can find someone cheaper, boom. You know, but if you've got a long-standing relationship with somebody, that's also very valuable. But yeah, so being in New York, so what do? Well, access. Well, I've got lockboxes on all my properties. I never have to be there. If someone's like, well, a contractor, I'll meet you there. I'm like, no, you won't. You won't meet me there. You will access the property via the lockbox, right? You know, tenants, they got a maintenance request. Well, they're submitting it through, I use Buildium. I spend $167 or something like that a month on that, but they're submitting the request through Buildium, right? They're paying their rents on Buildium. I got a lot of tenants that, well, I want to pay via check. Are you sure you want to pay via check? All right, I got to take your money. I have to, right? By law, I can't force you to pay a certain way, but I'm going to really encourage you to pay online. I'm going to help you get online because it's 10 times easier to get. And then when new tenants come in, I basically say, here, you're paying online, right? So you want to decrease, like, what do you need to be on the property for, right? You should not be having to go to every one of your properties all the time to do little things, no. Right? I'm in town, I'm in Minneapolis right now, right? You're obviously always going to be around. This is my home base. I come here often. I've got a place here. But I'm doing a walkthrough with my property manager tomorrow. We're going to walk through, I think, 4 of my buildings, and we're going to create a building list of, hey, these are the things that we want to do over the next 2 years, right? So you want to just automate as much as possible. That's another amazing benefit of real estate. You don't have to be there. Like you shouldn't be there. The most multi-millionaire real estate developers own real estate in other markets, yes. Right? So that you absolutely want to start building up your system to be able to navigate your team.
Absolutely. And, you know, I traveled the US in an RV with our 2 children while I was building and owned 100 units. And, you know, our team was only 4 people, the 2 of us on the trip and 2 other people back home. But it can be done. And this is in dial-up internet days, you guys. We'd be at the campground and I'd be at the office at the dial-up internet. And we didn't really have cell phones like we do. So if you can do that back in the early 90s, today it's simple. And we have these Zoom meetings, so nobody even knows where we are. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, you can even interview tenants. You can do showing. I mean, we know this because you're a realtor and I'm a realtor, you know, virtual showings. I have a ton of out of town buyers and you walk through with your phone and you can get it all done. So
let me say one thing though. That is not to say that it's not, it's hard to do this from another state and city. You just you have to build up your systems and your processes, and then you can, like, I was in Minnesota for, you know, building this up, and then at some point you can then go. I mean, you can be more transient or whatever.
I agree. You need a boots on the ground. Maybe it's your cousin, your friend, your somebody in the city if you're going to just start it up. Absolutely.
Well, and I would say you have to be there too. I mean,
once it's going, then you can get away.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And I'll say one more thing. You know, Minneapolis is a great place to buy. The Twin Cities is a great place to buy. You know, everyone's all like, whoa, all the protests, violence. And I'm like, I don't care about people's sentiment. All I care about are the numbers. What do the numbers say? And the Met Council just said 800,000 people are going to be added to the Metro in the next 25 years, 25 years, something like that. We're going to see a lot of growth. It's going to be, I just focus on the numbers, right? Don't buy into the hype of people moving. I mean, everyone's like, New York is dying last year. Now people are record numbers moving back to the city. So these micro trends, like short-term trends, I don't care about. It's these long-term demographic trends that I do care about. So, but all that is to say, let's say at some point Minneapolis and the Twin Cities is not a good market to buy in anymore. let's say cap rates are 3%, and Columbus, Ohio are 8% cap rates. Well, you want to be able to access other markets, and you do that by building up your team, just building up your systems and your processes and your expertise, and then you can access other markets. I think that's important.
It's very important. We have to go where the numbers work. This business is a numbers game, just like you said. It's kind of like Monopoly. I mean, that's no kidding. There's principles behind Monopoly, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad has that game, cash flow. That stuff works. That's what it's teaching you, is some of these principles. So tell us, what were some of the mistakes that happened that you really learned a lesson?
One is I spent too much time doing too much of the work on my own. I'm a very hands-on person, and sometimes my mind, I like to shut my mind off and just work physical labor. I love physical labor. Both of my mom is a tough woman. She grew up on a dairy farm. My dad grew up on a farm. My grandpa owned a construction company. My other grandpa was a dairy farmer, right? So I think there's so much value in working hard and also learning buildings. Like in terms of building science, I understand it pretty well. I understand a lot of things. I don't have my general contractor's license, but I'm more dangerous. I know more than most general contractors in terms of knowing overarching things. Like I know quite a bit about landscaping and water penetration. And there's obviously going to be expert people that know more about gutters, but I'm pretty dangerous when it comes to things. So you gain a lot of that knowledge by doing a lot of the stuff on your own. That's effective. That's important. But I spend too much time doing things. I would fixate on gardening at a property and spend too much time on doing all that when in reality, or things like one time I put class 5 down to grade a property. Well, I should have put plastic down before the class 5. Okay, then I put plastic down on another property and I put class 5 over that. Well, class 5 is a limestone product. It allows for weeds to grow. Oh, okay. Well, what do I need to do? I need to put trap rock, like 2-inch, larger trap rock, which allows the sediment to go. So now you look at my properties that I've done that to, there is zero maintenance around the rock skirt of the property. Whereas some of my properties where I put the class 5 down, I'm constantly having to weed them. So now I have to go back and redo it with this trap rock, right? So I would say one thing is that I too quick. I just got into it. I wanted to do it without doing a lot of my research. And okay, well, what is the best way to put a rock skirt around a property? I would say over the years, that's probably been my biggest challenge, has been I just jump into it instead of really thinking, sitting back, what is the best approach for this? And then secondly, I would say I didn't think big enough soon enough. There's this mental barrier. A lot of people, maybe if they've only owned a duplex or a single family, or they're even going to buy their first place, they probably think, oh my gosh, a 10-unit building. I promise you, the second you close on that 10 unit, maybe give you a week or a couple days or something, you're going to be like, oh, it's actually not that hard, and then you're like, so I'm saying a lot of things at once. I'm just realizing all the issues, things that I've worked through. But one is don't be afraid of growth. Don't be afraid of like success. Most people on this call, you could buy a 10-unit. And I'll say one more thing finally is I was thinking this. I just sold a duplex like a month ago. And I said like a couple of years ago, I'm going to own this duplex for 20 years. Right. So I'm like, oh no, I'm going to own it forever. I'm going to own this forever. Right. Be focused on the numbers and the data. Don't be focused on like, oh, I love this property, I'm going to own this property forever. Be open to the fact, and I had to train my mind to think like that. Oh no, I'm not going to own this property for. It was on a beautiful lot. I wanted to redevelop the lot, but I realized, no, it's smarter for me to sell that, take the money, 1031 exchange it into a bigger building. I'm going to get to where I want to go faster than if I were to hold on to this building.
I love that.
Being open to.
I love that because you are so right. you know, when you're buying a personal home, it's an emotional purchase. This investing is not. It's emotional in the sense of, yes, I'm going to meet my goals, but nothing else. Just because you prefer a nice countertop does not mean you need it in your rental. It depends on where your rental is. And many times people over remodel the rental. We don't want that. You got to remodel it just right, because otherwise you're wasting money. We do have a couple of questions, so I want to ask you this. Ryan is asking, can you comment on hard or private money to pay cash for Burr? Can it be done and snowball that lender's cash over and over and keep paying them a competitive ROI?
For sure. I would say always, you know, someone once told me, you know, not making a dumb decision is so underrated. People are always thinking, oh, I gotta come up with all these brilliant ideas. I mean, I can't tell you how many investors I know. They're like, oh, I lost a whole bunch. I got killed in the 2008 recession. If they would have just like been more diligent, maybe like not try to shoot for the moon, just focused, being diligent, it starts to snowball over time. Like not doing something dumb is so underrated. That being said, so if you're like, well, I just bought a single family cash. So I've got a big line of credit, line of credit that's collateralized over my whole portfolio. I just bought a house, cash for $212,000, renovated it, put like, I don't know, 30, 40 grand into it, 35 grand into it, I think. Turned around, sold it a couple months later for $307,000, right? After paying out commissions, I'll net about 293, right? So, that I didn't have to, so the benefits of cash are, well, you can be more effective as a buyer. You can close faster. You also don't have to worry about all the refinance costs, right? If you close, it's cheaper to close the cash right away. So you want to think about that, but using hard money, I would say you always want to focus on, like, hard money is great. I personally have never used hard money once. Never.
I have.
So yeah.
I used it a lot. And to answer your question, Ryan, it can be done, but what's better than hard money in the situation you're talking about of reusing it is it's better if you can find a relative, somebody wealthy, a sort of a partner, but just a money partner, not a partner in all the projects, but a money partner that is agreeing to borrow you this money and then you pay it back and they borrow it. It's kind of like that revolving line of credit, but it might be from a private party. You can get that money from 8 to 10% versus 15 or better for the hard money.
I've got hundreds of thousands in a line of credit. I'm paying 4% on it, right? I mean, a lot of my interest rates are really low.
That's better.
So my question is, why not? Okay, I'm going to buy a single family home. This is how I did it, right? This is exactly how I went from once a single family home. I've never made W-2 income more than $50,000 a year forever, right? And now I own a multiple $1 million portfolio. Why not do this? Why not buy a single family home or a duplex? I lived in my first one. You can totally house hack, live in it, renovate it yourself, right? Add value, refinance out of it. It's so quickly. You could do that over a year and then refinance and take 50 grand out, right? Now you do that to another duplex or something, right? You can do it pretty quickly, sell those. So it might take you like it's going to take you the longest to start building up this path. But hard money is great, but like, I mean, shit, paying 15% and 20%, that's a lot. That's a lot of percentage. That dips into your margin hardcore. So why not go slower and, build up your systems and your processing. That's like not underrated. Give yourself time. Give yourself a 10-year trajectory. I say real estate's a get rich slow strategy. It is the opposite of get rich fast.
I love that. That's work. It is a get rich slow, but you still did it fast for your age. And now you're at the 10 and 20 unit buildings and you don't think twice because they fit your system. I love that because you built the system. Yeah. And that's why in real estate, people always say, get the first one, because the first one is the hardest one, because you're getting over your mindset and your fear. And you've got to take the plunge on that
Yes.
first one, and then you start to get sea legs. And then you can do it, because you had to hire a contractor and you had to experiment with some of this. So get the first one, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, people always say, so it took me okay, the potential issues that go on. I cannot tell you how many people, my dad is included, what happens if the water heater goes out? It's always the water heater. Everyone's always like, well, what happens if the water heater goes out, right? Or they're like, well, what happens if a pipe bursts? Like, it's always the water heater or a pipe burst, right? The risks of buying a single family home are very small. You can absorb the risks. It might take you getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, there might be a 0.5% chance that something catastrophic goes out, right? I've never, in my years of doing this, I've been doing this, 8 years now. I've never had a massive leak. And actually I did it in one of my buildings. I had a big leak, but it wasn't that big of a deal, right? You're able to just work diligently through things. So the big risks of buying a single family home, well, I don't really know what they are. I think the risks are actually way outrated.
They're way small. And you know what? You can always get a home warranty if you're worried about the dang water heater. But I mean, in my history, and this is why I teach investors, you know, I've had $1.2 million buildings burned down while I owned them. You know, not pretty, but guess what? I survived and figured out how to do it. You know, you figure out what you have to figure out when it happens. Somebody else needs an explanation here on when you say refi, you can just pull cash out. I'm curious today, you know, the mortgage market is interesting. Obviously we have these super low rates. Love that. I love that you can spin your money at 4%. Come on, guys, that's great. You can't do that anywhere else but in real estate. But when you do a cash out refi, are they, what formula are they using? 80% of the value, or what are they giving you these days?
Yeah, you could totally find 80% loan to value right now.
Yeah.
For a refinance. People are always like, well, where can I get 95%? I think TrueStone or something was trying, but you know what? You don't need 95%. Like you don't really need all that cash. Like I felt the same way. How can I get the absolute most amount of cash? Well, yeah, that's important, but you can do 80. You can totally find someone that does 80%. Reach out to me if you've got a question.
You know, I don't even want to have 95%, because you know what, too? You need to stay with safe leverage in what you do own. You don't want to get all totally over leveraged. So you're safer at an 80% loan to value. So what you're talking about in numbers is if you bought it at 250 and somehow raised the value to 400, now you can get 80% of the 400 is the formula. And depending on what you owe, that gap is what you get.
Yep, and the formula is, so you take 80%, you multiply that by 400, and then you subtract your loan amount to what you owe on the loan. That's what gives you how much money you're going to be able to have on it.
So that answers how you pull the cash out. Now you need the right bank, as you just said about Gateway Bank is yours. And there's certain banks, no matter where you live in the US, that are real estate friendly. You need to be with a real estate friendly bank that understands this and doesn't have something they call overrides on the loans. And if you join an investor club is a great way, or like even our club, that's how you network with the right people to find out where to go. And the next other question I want to answer before we go is, how do you find your team?
Well, again, and there's no experience is the best teacher. I've gone through, I'll tell you, okay, get rich slow. And it's also it's not easy. Real estate is like, don't get into this thing. It's going to be a get rich fast. No, it is hard work, but like you could work your ass off becoming I love teachers. My best friends are teachers. You could work your ass off becoming the best teacher on the planet. 10 years, 15 years down the line, you're an expert at teaching. you're not going to make as much money as if you work your ass off in real estate and you're an expert in real estate in 15 years. You're going to make 10 times more money in real estate, right? So real estate, you still have to put the effort, the work into it, but it's just the ability for it to pay off way more than most other industries is really there. So how you find your best team? I've worked with, I had a guy that I was working with one time. I let him move into the unit and renovate the unit because he could do it cheaper than me. Guess what? One time I had 4 marshals meet me outside the property. They're like, do you live here? We think a fugitive is in your house. And I'm like, oh shit. And like, there was this guy's like son had moved in and I was a fugitive, right? I've had people bail on me. I mean, there is so many, like you can't like, but now I've gone through probably 10, 15 contractors, handyman, but then when you find the ones and like, you'll find one, and you're like, oh my gosh, you are my renovation guy. You are my boom. Or you're my hand, or you're my lawn care guy. Boom. I'm gonna just hold on to you, right? And so, but it takes time, and you do that by, I would say, 2 things: set up your expectations, know what you want, know what you expect in the person. Don't have crazy expectations. Like you're not. A lot of contractors will work with me because you're not like a suburban like family that like, oh, you missed this, you didn't cult this. They understand like I'm going to be flexible. I have certain expectations, but I'm also really easy to work with. I'm going to get materials there on. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make the process easy for them. But you want to establish your expectations, and then you want to just cycle through contractors and meet people. Every time I see a contractor on the road, a van, and everybody watching should do this, I snap a photo of the number. And I'm like, boom, that is someone that I want to call, because I don't necessarily want to be working with the people that have high marketing budgets. Right? You go on Google, the first 10, 15, 20 people you're going to contact, they're the people that are paying for this search engine optimization, this SEO stuff right online. You don't want to be paying. They're going to then raise their prices so that their margin is okay, because they have to pay for all that marketing stuff. I want to work with a guy that literally doesn't have a lot of time, doesn't have money or whatever, is not charging these prices. The contractor that I have right now that I will literally, this guy has changed my life. His team, I found him he was flipping another house, and I walked in and I was like, I snapped a photo of his van. I went and talked to him. This guy, no joke, he's changed my business model, because I mean, it's incredible. So, but it takes time. It takes you time to find these contacts. And then when you do find them, continue to evaluate the relationship, continue to evaluate the prices you're paying, right? Because I've also had contractors that they were great right away, but then they got a little expensive after 2 or 3 years of working with them. And then I started to work with another company. So it is a constant thing that you're going to be doing, but you will find your team, and it'll change your life. It literally will change your life and your business.
Absolutely. Now, just to wrap up, what do you see in store for 2022? I mean, I know you're a realtor, but mostly for your own deals. Is that kind of how you work?
No, I work with other people. I primarily work with investors, but I just sold a property. I'm working with LeAnn on a project right now, actually.
Yeah, we're doing a deal together.
We're doing a deal together right now. It's awesome. And so I definitely have, I'm networking in that, because that piece of it, right? You want to keep those. So I will definitely broker a deal for some investors. But what do I see in 2022? I do not see a big correction coming, to be honest. I don't. And the reason is, people are like, yeah, but prices have gotten so high. And I'm saying, okay, what caused the crash in 2008? And for people, investors, you should study 2008. Study it, understand. If you don't understand exactly what happened in 2008, you should not be talking about why you think that a crash is coming, right? The reason 2008 happened, there was a bunch of adjustable rate mortgages, ARM mortgages. So these all came due, but if you're, and they had to pay them back, right? And then that caused a wave of foreclosures, which, what did that do to supply? Raise supply. Demand stayed the same, prices went down, right? So if we're looking at today's market, well, everybody's on these fixed 30-year fixed mortgages at very small interest rates. So let's say the value of their home did go down. Well, what is going to cause the supply meter to change? A wave of foreclosures. Well, what's going to cause a wave of foreclosures, right? Even if the value of someone's home stops going up, maybe that it's going to stay where it's at, but that's not going to cause them to foreclose, right? And so I think with demand, I think housing costs, prices, labor. Now, let's say we had a surge of labor. So it costs less money to build a home. That could be something that pulls down value, because again, it comes down to supply and demand. If you're raising supply, demand stays the same, values go down. Supply goes up, demand goes up, value stays the same, right? Demand goes up, supply goes down, value goes up, right? So these are the metrics that you want to be looking at. So
I'm right with you, Gabriel. The metrics are critical. And if you look on my YouTube channel, under the playlist, couple back, I did an hour. I actually did a PowerPoint because I'm a data geek, a lot like Gabriel is, and I'm about the numbers. And it's called, Are We in a Housing Bubble? It's very relevant. It's nationwide information, and it covers everything what you're talking about and why we're not in a housing bubble, and there is nothing to worry about. And there is not going to be a wave of foreclosures here, even with the eviction moratorium over. There's way too much government help for that to be happening. It's just not, and foreclosures are 2% of the market. We're talking, okay, it might grow to 4%. That's nothing, in where we're at in the scheme of things. The demand, there's not enough housing. They can't build it fast enough for the people who need it.
Now, and I will say all that, but I will say for sure, trends are incredibly important, right? So studying U-Haul, LinkedIn, studying where they actually submit where people are moving to. Migration patterns are so super, super important.
Super.
Now, would I buy an A-class? I'm buying a lot of C-class buildings right now, right? Because so you want to also understand the trends of where things are at, right? Like you want to understand new construction. New construction is going to hurt A-class housing. It's going to probably bring some values down. C-class housing though, and we're talking about 1980 builds, beautiful buildings, but they're just like, there's no amenities, whatever. Those I think I'm seeing long-term, even if crime continues to go up, C-class units are going to be very, very attractive because you're going to have there's a whole bunch of things to it. So I would say be cognizant of what you're looking at, what trends you're looking at. Trends are super important, but I don't see a huge bubble bursting. But again, hey, 2008, to be honest, multifamily apartment buildings really didn't do that poorly either, right? So you're also looking at rental units are actually a hedge against that single family housing market. If that goes down, it actually pushes renters into the market. We actually saw over the last 10 years, we saw 1.8% increase for 88% of the market in the Twin Cities, right? We saw a huge increase in rents around the 2008, 2009, 2010 timeframe because it was pushing a lot of homeowners into the market, into the rental market.
And rents are going up now. Now, just to wrap up today, I want to tell you, hey, what if you want to get in touch with Gabriel or me? So I'm going to switch real quick to a screen and show you how to do that. So I offer free strategy sessions, okay? And you can schedule with me, and Jeannie will put it in the chat box. Or you can go to my website, LeAnnRiley.com, and go under the Realty Group section, and you can schedule a free strategy session. Okay, and how do you get in touch with Gabriel? Right here. I'm putting his contact information, and that will put in the chat box too. And he has a good Instagram following, he says there. So I have his Instagram.
Not a good Instagram following. I've actually started to do a little bit of because I think, first of all, I want to put a plug for LeAnn. What you've done is amazing, creating these online things. And I was so super grateful to be a part of this talk today, but I would like to start doing more things online. So I do have an Instagram follow. I think maybe 150 people follow it or something, but I'm going to be doing more and more. And people reach out to my phone number or my email. I would love to connect with you. I talk a lot. I would love to connect with people. So reach out.
That's great. And, I love finding people like you, Gabriel, who, you're just a guy who started with a single family house, just like I was. I just started with a home equity loan, and figured out how to do it. And, you know, I'm just grateful that I found a way now. This is passive income in the same theory of teaching people through my online coaching program. So I can teach all that many more people, no matter where they are, versus repeat the same thing 100 times over to each and every person. So, and in a way, that's passive income for me, somewhat like real estate, because I'm an entrepreneur, because now I just have to show up on Wednesday from noon to 1:30. And just
That's
like
awesome.
these live streams, you know, I went virtual long before COVID, because you know what? People don't want to go to meetings. They want to network, but they don't really want to go to meetings. And oh, it's snowy tonight, I'm not going to show up. And there I am with my speaker and 10 guests, you know, versus 100. So I went virtual long before it became anything. I'm considering something. And so if you want to put in the chat box, anybody who's still here, we got quite a bit. I'm considering breakout rooms right after this so we can network the people who are here. So I can easily add that, and we could just chat and meet each other, which, hey, that's always a great thing, because networking is key in real estate. Somebody says, sounds great. That's good. Thank you. So thank you, Gabriel, for sharing some of your expertise. It's so good to hear from somebody who does it, and just congratulations for coming so far from like being taught by yourself and just studying, and then just do it, right? And then you learn. And now you have the right team, so you can live in New York and here and still grow. So it'll be fun to catch up with you in another year or two and see where you're at.
I would love that. I would love that. Yeah.
And like I said, we're doing a deal together. So it, you know, and that all started from that meeting on the porch.
It's so cool. I mean, really, yeah, networking is especially in real estate, because you know, a lot of commercial buildings, the vast majority are not on MLS.
Yep.
When I see something on MLS, actually, I'm like, it must have been picked over by a whole bunch of other people. So I rely almost solely on my network to find these 10 unit, 20 unit, you know, 6 unit buildings. So it's vitally important. And
the deal, just so you guys know, the deal that Gabriel and I are involved in right now, it was off market. So I called LeAnn up. I was like, listen, LeAnn, I got this building, and you got someone. I went to her right away, and boom, she found a buyer. Boom. So it's like, that's how it happens. That's how it happens. And I just want to say, you know, Mike says you guys were awesome. Pasha says, thanks for your time. Josh says, very informative. Thanks a lot, Gabriel. Chelsea says, thank you. So we appreciate that, because this is great info. And again, you'll find this on the YouTube channel, and anybody who's in the club, you're going to get a newsletter with the replay. So thank you so much. We'll be chatting again soon.